Good morning, boys and girls. I am Mrs. Brown, and today is Thursday, September 17th, 2020. Today in writing, we are comparing narratives and imaginative writing. So a few things that you will need to get started is a pencil or something to write with, and paper or something to write on. If you have been using a writing journal to do your personal narratives, that would be a great place to store this information as well. If you do not have these materials, please press pause and come back when you are ready. At that point, you may press play again. We will also be using these links for Enemy Pie and The Bad Case of Stripes. Once you click on them, it will open up to a new window where you will be able to listen to both of these books. Both of these links will be in that colorful document provided by your teacher, and I will tell you when to go back and click on them. So let's start with our objectives. We will compare personal narrative writing and imaginative writing. You will use a Venn diagram to find similarities and differences between personal narratives and imaginative writing. So let's start with a connection. Last week we were working on personal narratives, which were true events about our lives. We used things like word choice and adding adjectives and details to make our writing even better. We are going to continue with those same things, but today we are beginning a new unit of study where we will be using our imagination to create fiction stories. Today I'm going to teach you how writers immerse themselves in imaginative stories. We will chart our noticings because it'll help us to become familiar with the genre of fictional writing. Last week, we wrote personal narratives. They were true stories about our lives. However, most of the time when we go to the library, we choose literary texts that we know are fiction. Authors have used their imagination to create and write their stories. Some are realistic fiction, some are historical fiction, some are science fiction, and some are fantasy fiction. Whenever we're reading personal narratives, we know that those are true events about the writer's life. It is written in first-person point of view, and it takes place over an amount of time. It usually has a message that the author wants to share, but the reader is limited to the writer's point of view. So if they're writing in first person, they're saying things like, I went, or I am going. In fictional text, the writer makes up the characters and the plot. The plot can be based on a real event, but it is not limited to that. The writer may include a message that applies to everyone, not just the writer. The writer of fictional text can also be written from many different points of view, like first person or third person. So they're not just saying I anymore. We might hear he or she or they. The writer may choose among countless topics and is not limited to a personal experience. So even though these seem like they are very different, they also have a lot of similarities. They have beginning, middle, and end. They are also including a setting, characters, and plot. So at this time, I want you to pause, go back to your colorful document that your teacher has listed in her Google Classroom, and click on the link to listen to both stories. Once you have listened to them, you may come back and press play again. Welcome back. Now that you have read or listened to both stories, let's refresh. Personal narratives tell true stories about our lives. Most stories that we read, though, are fiction because the authors use their imagination to create and write these stories. So let's decide on some differences between a personal narrative and imaginative writing. So while you were reading, hopefully you were able to see which one was a personal narrative and which one was an imaginative writing. In Enemy Pie, we know that they were writing in first person. It was a story about the little boy who had to spend the day with his enemy. That's an experience that he had. That makes it a personal narrative. In The Bad Case of Stripes, it was a story that the narrator was telling about a little girl who chose not to eat her lima beans anymore because her friends didn't like it. That is a story that is an imaginative writing. Little girls don't really change colors when they put on different outfits, right? So let's see some differences between these two types of writing. With a personal narrative, it is a true story about an event in the writer's life. It is also told in first-person point of view, and it usually contains a specific lesson that the author learned. So not necessarily everyone else will learn it who's read it, but it is a lesson that the author did learn in that experience. With imaginative writing, the plot and the characters were invented by the author, although they may have been inspired by a life event. The author can write in first person or in third person. And there are countless topics, conflicts, and characters with a setting. So now it is your turn. You will fill in a Venn diagram that is provided in your Google Classroom by your teacher about characteristics of personal narratives and imaginative text. So I have given you some, but surely you can come up with some on your own. After you list the differences, see if you can find any similarities of the types of writing and add them in the middle. Remember that a Venn diagram is two circles, so the part that they overlap is where you will write your similarities. Today and every day, when you are writing stories, remember that writers get ideas from other stories and include setting, character, plot, and a message in their own writing. I hope you enjoy going through both of those books and finding some similarities and differences in both types of writing. Have a great day.